Today's guest has achieved the dreams of every musician. He has won Grammys. He's shared the stage with Bob Dylan. He's been on Saturday Night Live, played the White House for Obama. He's worked with legendary producers, headlined major festivals, including both Bonnaroo and Austin City Limits 2 times. His voice, his guitar, his banjo have created music that has debuted on the top of the Billboard 200. I don't know how many times his songs have been played at weddings and dances and graduations and sporting events and funerals. And he always thought his career would stay on course, that he and his bandmates would, tour the world until they were like the Rolling Stones and they just dropped dead. Then in 2021, 14 years after co-founding Mumford Sons, he watched it all vanish like that. Like so many disasters these days, it started with a tweet, and it wasn't even an unusual tweet. He had done tweets like this before. It was a book review, something that he had read. It was a book recommendation. Ironically, the book is Unmasked by Andy Ngo, which details left-wing extremism and how it has become mainstream. Well, that didn't go well. So today, he's embracing the power of free speech with his new podcast, Marshall Matters, on Spectator TV. His guests have included Don McLean, Candace Owens, Jordan Peterson. And like many of them, he was excommunicated from the Church of High Culture. He's fine with that. What good is membership if it demands self-betrayal? Please welcome Winston Marshall. If you're only listening to this podcast, you're going to miss something special that I brought for this podcast in this box. It's something extraordinarily rare that I think he will really enjoy. Being from England and all that stuff. Anyway, let me tell you about our sponsor, and then we get right into the podcast. Over 2 decades ago, the founder of Covenant Eyes faced the same questions many people face today. How can I teach my children to use the internet and with integrity? How can my own heart remain pure online? How do I serve as an example to my family and to my church? So it was this mission that was in mind. The Covenant Eyes was created. Covenant Eyes is a world-class software and educational resource center, which now used by over 1 million people in the country. Covenant Eyes wants to help equip you, and if you're a parent or a grandparent, with the resources that will help protect your family. And they want to give you a free parenting ebook called Connected. This book explores how strong family connection can protect children and their teens from the dangers of hidden pornography use. By the way, it ain't all that hidden anymore. It contains real-life stories and practical tips for maintaining or reestablishing connection in your family. This book is going to help strengthen your relationship with God, with your spouse, with your children, so your family can live a life that is free from the evils that surround pornography use. Get your free copy right now. Just connect by texting Glenn, Glenn, to 66866. That's Glenn to 66866. Welcome.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. Great to have you here.
The pleasure's mine. I remember when I got a very nice message of solidarity from you when I quit my band, and I wasn't actually familiar with your work at the time. But
you grab on YouTube, but they'll educate you quickly.
But I was very grateful for the solidarity. I thought it was very sweet of you.
Thank you. I try to send something out to everybody who has been canceled, no matter where they stand, left or right. I find this as a human being and also as a dad and an artist somewhat. I find it really offensive what's going on. This is not good.
Yeah, you're seeing this across the arts, really. I mean, it's not just in your great country, but also in Britain, that just artists are getting cast aside for having the wrong opinions or being forced to quit. That's quite a common thing. For example, there's a woman called Rosie Kay who I recently interviewed, and she's a choreographer. And she had a dance company for 14, 15 years. And because of her gender-critical opinions, she got ganged up on by the entire crew, or the entire cast of dancers, and was forced to resign. And, she'd put her life into this project. It was her everything. And for artists as well, most artists, they don't make that much money. So you build these things up over a career, and then you have it swiped away from you like that. It's a very, very painful experience.
But I mean, it goes around. Eventually, I mean, I don't understand how artists in particular don't understand, and even homosexuals as well, have been forced into the closet for so long, especially in Great Britain. How they don't understand, wait a minute, I shouldn't be doing the same thing that was happening to me, because eventually it just eats its own, doesn't it? I mean, just eventually consumes. You're never going to be politically correct enough for somebody.
Well, I don't fully understand it. What do you mean there, in terms of trying to abide by?
By silencing others, especially when you have been silenced, okay? By silencing others, you would think it would be very obvious. That's a bad thing. That's what we've been working on civil rights. That's what we've been trying to stop.
There's a serious free speech issue, and I don't mean necessarily legally, although there in Britain there's been legal issues on free speech where people have been losing their jobs.
And police come to the door if you're...
That's also true. There's police in Britain are police coming to the door if you tweet the wrong thing, if you have gender critical opinions.
My gosh.
There's certainly examples of that. But there's a culture of free speech that we've lost. So it's not necessarily, we still have the First Amendment, or you have the First Amendment here in the States, but there's this idea, I think back to when Neil Young said he'd remove himself from Spotify if Spotify didn't get rid of Joe Rogan. Now, of course, I believe in freedom of association. That's totally legitimate. But it's the idea that it's not the association, it's the specific speech that people want removed. And for that to come from artists whose very career, who's founded on the premise that one needs to express themselves, how can one express themselves in that climate? How can one create art in that climate? How can one create music, write lyrics, write great prose? It's insanity. And I've been very puzzled within the creative industries. I'm not entirely sure whether there's a large group of homogenous thinkers where, let's say, this progressive thought has really taken hold, or whether a small minority of progressives have real power in self-censoring the masses. It's not entirely clear to me what is going on. There's evidence for both. For example, when I quit Mumford Sons last year. I had many artists messaging me saying they were self-censoring. Hundreds, actually. Maybe I've had thousands of messages from all walks of life and all professions, but artists self-censoring, and it's shocking, and it doesn't
artists
mean
that we would know that would be surprising that they're self-censoring.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to betray
I'm not saying I'm not because
they speak in confidence, but that also speaks for the climate that they don't. I feel like I shouldn't say their names because I don't want to get them into trouble.
Right.
That's insane.
So, what was the tipping point for you? First of all, you left Mumford Sons. Mumford's gone. You've written most of the songs.
No. So the band formed in 2007, and originally around Marcus the singer. He had a bunch of songs, and then as we grew, it turned out that we all contributed songs. So I certainly contributed decent songs, and I'm actually now back here in your great country. Playing some of those songs, and I've been playing concerts of California, New York, and Arizona, and playing some of the songs. But the band we all contributed songs, and
it's kind of a Queen thing.
What do you mean?
Queen,
the band,
they never put their name as the author. They just made
it's true, and we collaborated together, and those songs developed together, and they were shaped live. I mean, they were shaped in this country. We toured America relentlessly. By the end of this trip, I'll have visited 48 states in this great country. I was thinking, I love this.
What are you missing?
Hawaii and Alaska.
You've got to see Alaska, Hawaii. It's beautiful, but boy, that is progressive city.
Really?
USA. Oh yeah, very progressive.
I was very shocked in California. So I did a show in Los Angeles and show in San Francisco, and I haven't been back for a while. And every other store in both those cities has some sort of token marker to a progressive cause, whether it's a rainbow flag or a trans flag or a BLM thing or some sort of virtue signaling to an identity group. And it seemed to me, and actually in San Francisco as well, there's a huge mural to Greta Thunberg outside my hotel, like the sort of matron saint of eco-anxiety. And it seems to me, it reminded me about in the scripture when the Jews marked their homes with the blood of the lamb, so that the angel of death would pass over them when the plagues were for the firstborn. And it's almost, and I'm sure this is true in Portland, Oregon, it's almost as if people are marking their property so it doesn't get vandalized. Now, I don't want to be so rude about California and America, because I absolutely love this country. It's just, as an outsider,
we've changed, and you're spot on. And even during some of the riots, a lot of these were black-owned stores that they burned down, and they would, put the plywood on the windows and then spray paint. We're black-owned. Please don't burn down. It eventually they come and eat everybody. Well, it's what a great analogy of the lamb's blood.
Well, this is what's got me into trouble. Originally, the reason I had to quit Mumford & Sons is because I tweeted about a book critical of far-left extremism in the United States by the conservative author Andy Ngo, journalist. And he documents in that book the 19 killed in the first 14 days of the BLM riots, and the many black businesses ruined and destroyed in the ensuing riots. And just to paint a picture of the climate in the music industry, in June 2020, in that heinous killing of George Floyd happened, the music industry en masse put up black squares, and it became a picket line. If you didn't put a black square up, if you didn't support Black Lives Matter,
the angel of death was visiting your home.
Absolutely. Now, here's an example of it. The band Hanson, I don't know if you remember this band.
I do. They're friends.
Really?
Yeah. They live up the street.
Oh, great. Well, then you should get them in to talk about this, because apparently they didn't exist as a band, didn't put a black square up because they didn't exist. Their fans got so angry at the fact that they had to reform in order to apologize to the mob. And that shows how fervent the time was. So
it's mob rule. It really is. Mob.
Absolutely. So I got into trouble because I was critical of that specific, or the excesses of it. Because look, of course we care about Black lives. Of course. We want to see every American, every human lifted up, and we want to create a level playing field from which to start.
Correct. And we also want cops, like the guy who killed George Floyd, want them out. Don't want any bad cops. But they're not all bad.
Absolutely. But the problem you get is people want to ignore the excesses of certain behavior if they believe it's a good cause, which means that bad things happen. And that's a serious issue. So now, since I've come out and been in sort of trouble, I feel like it's my duty a little bit to speak out on these issues where I think that there are excesses. And having come from a liberal background, my dad ran for the Liberal Democrats in the UK. I was brought up canvassing for the Liberals.
Hang on, what is a liberal over there? Because the world misunderstands American liberals.
Sure.
And Progressive is different than a liberal. A liberal here should be somebody who believes in the Bill of Rights and will fight for the rights of the average person. Okay, a conservative is over here a person that wants the smallest amount of government so it can never get out of hand and do the things that it's doing right now. Progressives are the same in both countries. So is that a liberal to you?
So I would distinguish myself as being neither conservative or progressive, but rather a liberal in the classical liberal, British liberal tradition.
Okay.
And I do believe that we need some government, because I think that...
Oh, so do I.
I don't believe in libertarianism. I believe that unchecked and unregulated, the system isn't totally fair. And then I guess there's a bunch of social issues that progressives have gone completely awry on. For example, I wrote a piece on Barry Weiss's Substack, and I quoted Martin Luther King and his, I have a dream speech where he said we should judge people by the content and the character. Not
That's
the
trouble.
And I was called racist for quoting him.
I know.
I mean, am I insane?
No.
Okay,
I saw something the other day. Somebody said, somebody posted a quote on, I don't know, Facebook or something. I thought it was the best. Am I actually a Nazi fascist or just a normal person 10 years ago? You know what I mean? Because everything that you thought and held dear, like Martin Luther King, now you say that, and no, you're a racist.
If you're getting called racist for quoting Martin Luther King, I think we can see now what's going on. Those terms have lost all meaning. Fascist, Nazi, racist. It's
really dangerous, because once they don't have meaning, racism, fascism, it does exist.
Exactly.
And if you've made those terms, it's a little boy who cried wolf. If everybody's a racist, then how do we stop real racism?
Exactly. How do we identify that? And also, frankly, it disrespects what happened before.
Yes.
My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. The idea that I'm called a Nazi now, given that 13 people in my family were obliterated by the Nazis in the camps and the death marches, is offensive to my family, although it's so absurd that it's almost beyond offense. It's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it changes history. It changes how we understand history. So the battle, the word battle, the semantic battles going on now are just very
insane. I just had what was it last week? I had Benjamin Netanyahu on, and he gave me the Defender of Israel award years ago. However, I'm still a Nazi. And we were joking about it. It's like none of it makes sense anymore. Let's look at what people are doing, content of their character. I figure I'd have more credibility. Well, maybe if I'm not talking like I'm a chimney sweep. Doesn't work. Man, I wish I had that accent. You'd think I was smarter, honestly. And with a pair of glasses, my gosh, nobody would even recognize me. Let me tell you about Good Ranchers. Good news and bad news. The bad news first, looks like beef prices are probably going to increase by another 20% early next year. Eggs are already up 40% year over year. Nothing like the largest price increases, especially in meat, in U.S. history. Now, here's the good news. Good Ranchers is letting you lock in your price on all the meat you buy this November when you subscribe during their Black Friday savings. This is your chance to inflation-proof your meat budget. You're going to get $70 of free USDA choice steaks, and you'll save an additional $25 on every box when you subscribe. So forget the high prices and the low quality at the grocery store. Believe me, it's probably not even American meat. I know, it says product of America. That means nothing. Truly. Treat yourself or somebody you love to Good Ranchers' award-winning service and their quality this holiday season. Remember, visit goodranchers.com/GLENN or use my code GLENN at the checkout and grab their best offer of the year. Black Angus. Have a don't have a normal Black Friday, have a Black Angus Friday this year. Get 2 free steaks from Good Ranchers right now. American meat delivered. So let's finish up on the Mumford and Sons stuff, because you you posted that, and then you apologized.
Right. So the story specifically was that through the pandemic, I was posting books I was reading. It's one of the themes of my social media. I didn't have many followers on social media, and I tweeted about books from Mao's Little Red Book to Tolstoy's War and Peace, whatever I was reading I found interesting. And one of the books, as I said, was Andy Ngo's book, and somehow it just completely exploded in a sort of Twitter storm. These things happen, and they say Twitter isn't real life until it's real life, and that's true, because initially I was like, it's just a storm, it will pass. But then you get the phone calls, then you get your friends, people you work with calling you up. Some of them are worried for you. Some of them are worried about what's going on. They don't understand what's going on. And then you slowly see your life unraveling. And fortunately now it's been 16, 18 months and I built a new life, so I feel stronger talking about it. But for a long time it was very painful to talk about that time and the coming months. And so I issued an apology, partly because when you're under attack, let's say if you're at a dinner table and you say something offensive, someone's offended by what you say, you would say, oh, I'm so sorry. What do I not know? Explain to me. So I was certainly open to not understanding the full picture. And I wanted to protect my bandmates who were getting pulled under the bus with me. So I issued an apology. And then in the coming months, gradually, I looked deeper and deeper into the topic, and I realized I hadn't been wrong. I'd called the author brave. Not only was he brave, he'd been attacked by Antifa mobs in Oregon, but he was then attacked again. Video of that came out again in a hotel.
I find him incredibly brave.
Exactly, unquestionably brave, and so my conscience really started to bother me. I was also frustrated that I felt like I was in some way excusing the behavior of Antifa by apologizing for criticizing it, which then made me feel, well, then I'm as bad as the problem, because I'm sort of agreeing that it doesn't exist, which I found very frustrating. Another point, by the way, I found it very frustrating that the left-wing media in this country and in my country don't even talk about it. We can all see this footage. We see it online. They don't talk about it. And that's part of my, I think, interest initially in tweeting about Andy's book, because I think people need to see what's going on. And it's a blind spot there. But anyway,
So wait. When you say they don't talk about it, you mean the average person talks about it, but in the media
doesn't talk about the CNN and MSNBC, all that stuff. They don't cover it. Biden in his presidential election said it was just an idea. It didn't exist. I mean, did he not see the courthouse in Oregon being burnt down like night after night? You know, all this outrage for the Capitol Hill storming, rightly. What about the outrage when federal buildings are being attacked the rest of it? Now, I know I'm British and it's going to jar with your American listeners to hear a Brit commenting on your politics, but I care about America. I love America, and a successful, great America means a successful, great world as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you respect
you're in safe territory here.
So then another thing was that there's this essay, and we spoke about this a little bit before speaking now, by Alexander Solzhenitsyn called Live Not by Lies. And he wrote it, I think, 1973, 1974, when he was expelled from Moscow.
He didn't know he was being expelled. He wrote it, it's my understanding, he wrote it thinking that this may be the last communication he's allowed to have. And so he wrote it and released it, and then I think it's the next day he was expelled.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So this essay, which I encourage listeners to read, is about 5 pages long, includes a paragraph where it says something along the lines of, how dare you call yourself an artist, if you are not prepared to live by the truth. And that affected me. And each time I read it, it hit harder and harder and harder. And this apology that was out there that I'd issue, it felt like to me that apology would detract from all I could create moving forward. Because whatever song I write, whatever prose I write, how can I say that it's true if I have this apology
hanging
you
are so rare. You are so rare.
So eventually, I decided the only way out of this was for me to quit. Now, for context, the band had been told by several radio stations they wouldn't be played again. I was due to play a DJ a festival in the UK, and they dropped me. There were repercussions, professional repercussions, for my opinion. And if I'd been a sole actor, things would have been very different. But I had a responsibility to them, and I didn't want them to be harmed for my opinion. So I felt the best way forward, the only way forward, really, was for me to quit. And I explained so in a Medium letter. My objective was to clear my conscience. I wasn't sleeping. I lost a ton of weight. I was losing my mind a little bit, and even making myself lose my mind. I was like, am I crazy? Everyone's telling me I'm crazy. Then you start, I'll
tell you, when you first go through this, I talk to people who say, oh, no, it doesn't bother me at all. I don't think about it. You're either a liar or you're really shallow, because in 2007, there's this Associated Press poll that comes out, most admired men in the world. I was tied for third with the Pope and Nelson Mandela. That's how sick America was, okay? And I'm like, what? I do the same show. I was on CNN. I do the same show over on Fox. The next year, I'm one of the most hated men in America. You want to talk about schizophrenia. I go through this, and, when you have a good majority of people saying, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a Nazi, you're this. If you're a thinking, feeling human being, you take that at some point and go, "How? I don't think I'm that. How are they getting that? What are they?" And you do an inventory of your life.
Yes, you do.
You know what I mean? And that's one of the good things, I think, that comes out of this for the individual. You come out stronger because you know who you are.
You most certainly do. And actually, to be totally honest, I don't care that much, or perhaps at all, what random people on Twitter I don't know or met think. But I do care about what the people around me and the people who I love and who say they love me care. So when they're doing it, it's very painful. So for me, that's what I think affected me. But what kept me strong and what has given me succor through all of this is my faith in God, and that has kept me. That's been the foundation. My family. I have a very tight knit family. I'm very close with my mum and dad. So that's what gets you through those difficult times. And had I not had God, had I not had Christ in my life, I'm not sure how I could have got through that period.
I don't want to take too much of a sidetrack on this, but this third time you've mentioned God, and then you mentioned Christ by name. It's my understanding that you have always said you're not a Christian, you're not religious, but you're spiritual,
So I was raised by a Catholic mother and a Protestant father in a sort of ecumenical household. I lost my faith aged 18, 19, and had my 20s, I would say, without faith, at points atheistic, at points agnostic. When I was an atheist, I probably had too many morals for an atheist. And that's not a dig. That's not a dig at atheists. It's more that I do think we need a metaphysic on which to build an ethic and a
Jordan
moral.
Peterson talks about it, and I believe this. I happen to believe it's all true, but even if it's not, it's made me a better person.
Your faith?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah. How so?
Yeah.
It gives me someone to answer to that's not human. It gives me someone to model myself after. I mean, you look at God and you just think of him as a dad. That's a pretty good model, of, especially when you start to have children. You never stop loving your children. No matter what they've done, you are always open to, come on back, come on back. It's no big deal. Do you know you screwed up? Do you know what happened? Come on in. I'm not judging you. I've been there. And that's a really good model for a parent and for a human being.
Yeah.
Okay. So wait,
So wait, just to finish that, I came back to my faith having gone through the experience of divorce. And I would say that philosophically, I was at the church door beforehand.
Yeah.
And through people like Jordan Peterson, his biblical series
is great,
just exceptional, and it brought me back to Scripture. But it was through the experience of suffering that I actually came back fully spiritually to Christ, and thank God I did.
Yeah.
Because the period, it wasn't long too long afterwards that I went through it, and as I said, had it not been for him, I'm not sure I'd have fared so well.
Yeah, I'll tell you, just again off subject here. I just read 2 Chronicles this morning before I did my show, and it was chapter 15, starting I think at 3, and it basically says, it describes today, and it's like the people had lost the God, the true God. They've lost the truth, and nations were rising up against nations. It was frightening to be out on the street, very dangerous to be out. And then it said, and then because of all this, they found the God of Israel again, Still a lot of price to be paid. But the message in it was, so don't give up. Your work will benefit in the end. And I thought, I think that's what's happening in the world. We've made other things our God. And when you make other things your God, well, if it gives me great stuff and all I have to do is this, that's great.
Yeah.
Well,
I've seen that not only in my own personal life. Like there was a period I made work my God, and I was quite literally addicted to touring and getting in the studio and working. But then if you talk on mass, and I just had Michael Schellenberger, environmentalist,
he's great.
On my show, and he describes the environmentalist cause as a surrogate religion, and it's very true, because we have lost God, and there are people don't have the belief like that we used to in the West, and so they're replacing it with these other causes. And like I described earlier, it's biblical how people are putting tokens outside their shops, and it's biblical to put a mural of Greta Thunberg as if like she's the Virgin Mary or something, an innocent girl. There's all these weird equivalents, but it doesn't have the
push for abortion the way it's being done now. Just this bloodlust almost is Moloch. I mean, it is Old Testament worship, just not done intentionally, but we are doing the same thing. We are worshiping other gods, whether we know it or not. When the alarm clock goes off in the morning and you open your eyes, is pain the first thing you think about? Used to be for me. I would get up every day and I'd be like, and all I would want to do is get back into bed. And I would be like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the day, but I'll get through it and I'll come back and I'll sleep. It was a problem that I thought would never go away, and it's a problem that I don't have anymore because I started taking Relief Factor and I got my life back. I can paint, I can write, I can even think in the morning without, the first thing, ow, I hurt. Relief Factor. I want you to try it for 3 weeks. Just go to relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. Order their trial pack. Try it for 3 weeks. See if it doesn't take away your pain. That's relieffactor.com. So let's go back to Mumford Sons. You've been friends with bandmates. I mean, your bandmates were your friends, right?
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that, at least it felt this way to me, that they didn't rally around. Say, we know him. Did they?
I wish them very well. They're incredibly talented musicians and artists and songwriters, and I have no doubt that they will have very important careers, and I hope they continue to create great art, and I would hate for anything I do to impede that. So I really wish them well.
That is the nicest, most Christian thing I think you could say. So you leave, and the good thing is there's a lot of openings for banjo players.
There's no job competition. This is where I started with the banjo, because in London, no one played it. No. So if I got myself into a band, there would be no one to take my place. I didn't have to be good. Right. I was terrible at guitar, and so I never got a gig. You're not wrong. As I said, I think earlier, this is my first time playing. I'm playing songs that I've written over the years.
We brought a banjo. I know you didn't bring yours from London.
Glenn, but your colleague brought a banjo made in China. Now,
well, he's fired. It's listening to you right now.
Yeah, exactly. Although in gold tone, I think it's a Florida base. I used to play gold tones. So they're designed in America.
Yeah,
but manufactured in China. Now we like the Chinese, but it's the CCP that we have a problem. So we want to make sure.
Have you ever thought? I have this conversation with people all over the country. Glenn, I think if we just all got together in our town, we could probably fix this in about 20 minutes. It's just the people are starting to wake up. It's not the parties per se. It's not it's not ethnic based. It's nothing. It's governments.
Absolutely.
They are the problem with the people. And they just think that it's like we're in a stage play. Mm-hmm. And we don't know we're going to play. And they do. Mm-hmm. It's really nuts.
It's not too hard to make the definition. Actually, I work a lot with technically ethnically Chinese, but Hong Kongers in Britain. I have a foundation, an organization pairing Hong Kongers fleeing the CCP who are taking over Hong Kong, and they're coming to Britain, and we're helping them assimilate and integrate. Any British listeners, we need volunteers, so Hong Kong link up.
Let us know how we can help you.
Yeah, the CCP are
horrible.
And
unfortunately, I didn't understand when all my big business friends said to me 20 years ago, China is the model. I remember saying, that's not a very good model. And they're like, well, it works over there, and it's really the model of the future. Yeah, now we're seeing it really is the model. I mean, we are moving towards that kind of a state, which is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's particularly terrifying, I think, something I can speak on specifically to the CCP, it's not only Hong Kong, but the Uyghurs. So I've been trying to raise awareness for the Uyghurs, and it's so difficult to do this, and I can't quite work out why. But there's between 1 and 3 million Uyghurs interned in camps in Western China, in Xinjiang.
No, China. The CCP says that's not true. Those were just...
We've seen the videos.
I know.
You're an apologist for the CCP now, Glenn. What's going on? This is quite a turn.
I love the video they just put out with some guy on the street, and he's like, there's all these things that are being said about us and here in China. And, no, look, here's a Uyghur man who's happy. And you're like, I think I saw this movie done by Goebbels.
Quite.
Yeah. A town for the Jews.
Yeah, and not only are the videos, but we had a Uyghur tribunal in the UK with testimonies of people who have fled and escaped, and this is the sort of tyranny of the CCP, and it's not just them; it's the Tibetans, it's the Mongolians, the Hong Kongers. Taiwan's next. That's only a matter of time. I'm very surprised by how little concern my generation and younger have for the CCP. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. I've been thinking about that. Like, why is it? Well, partly I think because China is culturally so alien from us. Like, the language is impenetrable, or impenetrable is wrong, but it's certainly very difficult. I've tried to learn it. It's the hardest language I've ever tried to learn. And a lot of their culture doesn't come over. I mean, of course, their food and some of the religious stuff comes over. But why is it that people in Britain, for example, will march the streets when George Floyd, 5,000 miles away, gets brutally murdered? But then I went on a Uyghur march in Parliament Square in Westminster the same 2 months later, where 3 million Uyghurs are in these internment camps, and there's 25 of us. How is it that there's this attention given to American problems, but no attention given to...
This is the same problem. Gosh, what was the name in England? I feel bad. I can't remember it right now. The guy who stopped slavery.
William Wilberforce.
Yeah, Wilberforce. This is the same problem Wilberforce had. You know, how do I get people to pay attention and say this slavery is wrong? The problem with it is it's so ugly, no one wants to deal with it. It's so ugly that no one thinks that they can actually affect it. And, you know, I'm getting my stuff cheaper. So, I mean, it's this weird moral quagmire.
You know, Wilberforce, if you bring that up, so the people of Britain at the time went on a sugar strike where they refused to buy sugar to signal that they were disapproved. En masse, they did this to disapprove of the slave trade. So he managed to get the attention of the masses on that deplorable trade. What seems to be so impossible with not just the Uyghurs, but any of the behavior of the CCP is to actually capture the imagination of the masses in the West. It just doesn't happen. And I don't know if we need some kind of horrible footage, but we've got footage of the Uyghurs.
Oh, no, it's bad.
So, and we've got footage of Hong Kong, and we know what's going on over there. So why it's not, it's still a bit of a mystery. And perhaps that's because there's some sort of...
Go ahead.
There's some sort of, when there's a social justice cause, one feels like one has to go along with what's been presented unquestionably. And so because no one's really presenting the case for the Uyghurs, well, actually that's not true. I've been trying, but because it's not a popular movement, people aren't,
correct,
going along with it. I'm not sure I know.
Yeah, I think we're at the beginning of this fight. Remember, this is, I mean, I've studied the Holocaust quite a bit, and it's not much different than what Americans were doing in World War II. You know, you'd have it. I mean, you had the information. We had it. Went to our president, went to everybody. It was in the papers. New York Times just kept burying it. And even Jews here, not all of them, but even a lot of Jews here were like, let's not cause any problems. We don't, it's a weird thing that humans do from time to time, where they can look away from that, but there'll be one person over here that is, George Floyd. It's bad, but in comparison, we don't want either of them. But this one is horrifying because it's happening all the time, every day, 24 hours a day, to millions of people. And somehow or another, we can see this, but we can't see that.
Yeah. Now, there's good reason to march at the injustices that blacks are facing here and elsewhere. And George Floyd, it's not a criticism of that necessarily. It's more a criticism of the lack of protest.
Sure,
anyway. So yeah,
and I think we're just at a better place now than in the It's not the 1960s anymore. That's a past generation, and I think there's a lot of people who truly are colorblind. They listened to Martin Luther King, and they're I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't want any of that to happen. And yet I think it's our politicians that are, and people who are craving power or money or whatever, that are separating us for the most part. I noticed you put the banjo down, so you're not going to play the banjo.
Well, I didn't bring my finger picks, but...
wow.
You know what? Invite me back,
okay,
and
okay.
I'll do a little show for you.
So you just had somebody I have wanted to have on my show forever. You just had him on your podcast, Don McLean.
Oh, yeah. What a total legend.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did you ask him about... Bye Bye Miss American Pie. What is that?
American Pie.
Yeah, American Pie.
Yeah. So that song's now 50 years old. I mean, surely it's the number one song in the American songbook.
Yeah.
And he actually, it was interesting. He talked about it he likened, and I encourage people to listen to the episode. But he likened to it the cancel culture stuff. He said, I was writing about this 50 years ago.
He was.
And it's the day the music died, and he's like, this is what's happening with cancel culture. And so he's a very switched on gentleman, and And what a career he had. And when he started, he would do these tours up and down the Hudson River with Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe, famous communist, but also great pioneer of the banjo for his sins. He wrote this superb introduction.
I can't imagine a communist with a banjo. It just doesn't seem...
There are lots. Oh, no, sorry, it's not Bill Monroe. I made a total mistake. It's Pete Seeger.
Oh, okay,
Forgive me.
Pete Seeger. Yeah.
Pete Seeger, not Bill Monroe.
Yeah.
I don't know Bill Monroe's politics.
Yeah.
And Pete Seeger, that's a terrible mistake to make.
This land is your land.
Seeger would do these tours with musicians and professors, intellectuals and poets, and bring these people together. And Don McLean was about that, and he was brought up in that environment. And back then, it was them who were being made to shut up.
Yeah.
It was the leftists who were told by majoritarians on the right, and this goes on later as well into the 80s and 90s. And was it Tip Gore, Al Gore's wife?
Tipper. She was the one that wanted to,
she was trying to shut up Ice-T, and it's normally not normally. In America, it seems traditionally this moves against free speech have tended to come from the right, but that's, I think, completely changed now, and it's coming from the progressives, not the liberals, because if you're a liberal, if you actually are a liberal, you believe in free speech.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not liberal. I'm sorry to break it to you.
I consider myself a classic liberal. Can we just leave each other alone? Leave each other alone. I want to share a testimony with you about a young mom who came into a preborn pregnancy clinic. Babies, not really in her plans. And even after seeing a halo on her baby on ultrasound, she was still leaning towards abortion. But then she heard the heartbeat. That's when she chose life. When an expected mom has an unplanned pregnancy, preborn is there. And not just to save the baby's life or help her bring it into the world, but to care for it long term. When they have an ultrasound and they can hear and see the baby, most moms have a divine encounter. We have a goal of saving 50,000 babies this year, and we're way behind. Would you sponsor an ultrasound and introduce a mother to her unborn child for only $28? That buys one ultrasound for these women who are coming in. $140 helps to rescue 5 babies' lives. And now through a match, your gift is going to be doubled. To donate, just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.com/Glenn. That's preborn.com/Glenn. So you started your podcast.
Yeah. So I've been having a great time. So it's called Marshall Matters with The Spectator. And I should say my agenda in coming to your show is to plug my show.
Okay.
There's no secrets. But I've been having a great time and exploring all the taboo topics that artists don't feel like they can speak. I just actually had a great Irish artist, who I won't name, but text me saying, I'm so happy you're talking publicly about this gender critical stuff, because the trans stuff is one of those issues, and I understand it's the same here in America, that you just cannot talk about it, and J.K. Rowling's the famous example.
I think it's worse over there. I mean, this is Britain. Hard to say, but I mean, what they're doing to J.K. Rowling is insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. She gets death threats, people not working with her. The actors...
What does the average person over there think about that? Or are they afraid to say?
That's a good question. You know, the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, who runs the Labour Party, which would, I guess, it's not quite equivalent to the Democrats, probably a bit more left than the Democrats.
Left, yeah. I can't say that
Democrats
anymore.
Have changed now, but he couldn't answer the question, what is a woman? And I think the average person probably sees that.
I'll take your party and raise you a Supreme Court justice that can't do it either over here.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Wow. I think when the average person sees that, I think they don't understand the gender wars, and they don't care. They've got real problems to deal with. But when they see that, they think, is he mad? Why can't you answer that basic? Why is that a basic question?
Right.
And then if you can't answer a basic question like that, how are we supposed to believe you on anything else? So I guess that's what most people think. However, I think also now that women are being attacked in prisons, raped in this country, in New Jersey, it was Demi Minor who raped and impregnated 2 women
in prison,
in a female prison. We have equivalent Karen White in Britain, but women's spaces are threatened. Women are threatened. We need to protect our women. Then there's what's happening to children, the puberty blockers.
Oh my gosh.
In Britain, that's been paid, puberty blockers and irreversible surgery. In Britain, that's been paid for by the state.
Right.
We're
starting to do that now. But you guys are stopping it, aren't they?
So, yes, this is what's been encouraging is that the Tavistock Centre, which was the centre undertaking this behaviour, this surgery, has been told to close by next year. So that's a small victory. And so I'm hopeful that we're going in the right way.
But didn't the NIH come out and say there's no reason for this? I mean, I thought they took a harder line on it than just shutting down that clinic. I thought they were
What's
saying,
the NIH? Sorry.
Or
the NHS?
Yeah.
I've understood that it's due to close, that it's been told to close. I think there are some people trying to defend it still, but I think it will close. So
got to stop.
But I think people, when they start seeing that, they see their wives and their children threatened this way. Men stick up for it. Women, it's a very misogynistic movement. Women are constantly being told to shut up. Eventbrite, I just saw yesterday, have deplatformed women, again defending women's sports, some sort of their event ticketing organisation. And the other thing which I think affects people is the concept of truth, particularly when in our schools, again, paid for by the state, children are being taught weird things about what is true and what is not true. It's anti-science, and it confuses children. I've got 2 cousins who are teachers, and they show me what they're having to teach their students, their young students, and it's completely bananas. And no wonder the kids are going to be confused. And if that's the starting point, how's the rest of the education going to go?
It's horrible.
So I think normal people, that's not hard to understand. In fact, that's much easier to understand than the gender nonsense that we're being fed.
Caitlyn Jenner understands that.
Well, actually, I didn't meet, but Buck Angel, who was a female to male transsexual, was at my show in Los Angeles. And he has been very brave and standing up and saying this is not okay to put children through. This is a serious procedure to go through, and I will not let anyone indoctrinate our children into this irreversible damage. And there are transsexuals, transgenders who are bravely standing up because it's caught fire, and it's what Jung called a psychic endemic. It's very shocking, and we've seen this at different periods. Helen Joyce describes it very well in her book Trans, and she's another guest I've had on my show, and you should have her on this show. Actually, she's superb. I think she's written the definitive book on the topic. But she describes as well there was an endemic of anorexia in Hong Kong about 15 years ago, and it's the same thing. Once these kids get the idea, it just grows out unchecked, and it's up to the adults to say no, stop, and protect the children. So back to your original question, normal people care about children, they care about women, and they need to protect both of them.
I have to tell you, I think the leftist move with trans, and mainly with trans, it is so anti-woman, and so insulting that you are just about your body parts, and that makes you a woman. No, there's lots of differences between men and women. And to tell women that they have to identify him, I mean, if look, we're friends, we're in the streets, whatever, you're a friend of a friend, whatever, and you come over and you're like, hi, I'm Judy. Hey, Judy, how are you? I'm not going to say, live your life. Live your life. But when you cross over and force people to say Judy is the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, and she is a woman, when if I go to a hospital because Judy's laying on the ground and I call an ambulance and I'm a friend, I say to the doctor, by the way, biologically a male. Mm-hmm. They have to know that stuff. Mm-hmm. They have to know that stuff. So why would I be am I lying the rest of the time? Mm-hmm. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You just can't do that.
And the lie has gone too far, and it needs to. But I hope that it's been brought now. It's coming to be checked, which is a good thing.
Are you afraid? I just read a story. Well, you studied improv, didn't you?
You've done your research, Glenn.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of improv. It didn't go very well. But
it didn't go very well because I was like, this isn't a funny conversation. Maybe it's me. I just read a story from Germany today. What could possibly go wrong? Between inflation and the lack of fuel, if it's a very cold winter, mm-hmm. the Bundesbank is now billions of dollars they're sucking in mm-hmm. and they're holding on to because they're afraid of power outages and shortages, and people will start to go to the bank and say, I want my money out, and there'll be a run on the bank. Mm-hmm. And they said that they were looking for, what was it? They were preparing for something like spirited exchanges with the Germans. And I'm like, I think you're thinking of riots, but that's okay. We are a financial or a cold winter away from real trouble mm-hmm. with people who can't recognize what a woman is. Mm-hmm. How are we going to fare through that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm very anxious about this winter, and
because England is really affected by this, right?
England's very affected.
Not as much as Germany, but
we've cost of living crisis is absolutely insane, and there's other things. And as we speak, it's COP27's going on, and there's a lot of bad ideas about how to deal with the environment, which again make things expensive. For example, in our country, we're very against natural gas and fracking, which would be a cheaper solution to deal with some of our energy crises, looming crises. And we're going into Russia and Ukraine are going to a war. When do Russia lose wars? When they're in the winter? They don't. Mm-mm. This is going to be a long one, and Putin's been making more money selling less oil because of our policy.
I know.
Which again,
thank you for taking a share of that, even though you shouldn't, because of our policy.
Yeah,
it's our policy.
Well, no, Britain's do the same. We've been doing the sanctions, and they've got foreign reserves. Russia have got foreign reserves. People are still buying oil. It's completely worked against our interests, and it's the working people of Britain who are going to suffer the most.
All of them, all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Working people of the world.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Can I go back to your family heritage in the Holocaust?
Of course.
Just to, first of all, which camp?
A mixture. So the story, my grandma, they were from Transylvania and left quite late because the Holocaust started in earnest late in Hungary, but then it was very rapid. In 43, and 44, it was awful. My grandmother and her brother and her parents fled. Actually, this is incredible. I have her diaries describing the experience going through from Transylvania through Munich. They got fake papers. They changed their name through Munich, eventually to France, and then to Portugal. And they stayed out the rest of the war in Portugal. And I have all of her.
Wow. And does she describe her feelings at the time, or is it just
well? It's quite an interesting read because it's a bit like Harper Lee or To Kill a Mockingbird or the J.D. Salinger book Catcher in the Rye, because you read it as the reader, you're the adult, you sort of understand what the child doesn't see. Mm-hmm. And so you're reading, she would have been 12, 13, 14, I can't remember exactly. And so she doesn't fully grasp how huge what's going on around her.
You should publish this.
I would like to. I'm going to try and translate it. She was a brilliant woman, and she spoke in 7 languages. She actually wrote them all in French, so fortunately I can read it because I can't read Hungarian. So one incident, for example, is there gets stopped at some border, I think, so maybe the Swiss border, and she describes seeing Nazi officers on the platform, and one of them slipping in the ice, and the others pointing and laughing. And it was just so curious to me that she would think to jot that down in her, like that was a thing. And another thing that's actually the most moving thing about it is that she got all her cousins to write goodbye notes. Now, at that time, they didn't know. They couldn't have known. Well, if they'd known, they'd have left. They wouldn't have known what had happened. And so we've got all these goodbye notes, and it's only been recent that my dad, for the family, researched and found out where specifically everyone went. And it's also more complicated than that. So there's a superb play by Sir Tom Stoppard called Leopoldstadt that I recommend, because it describes a Jewish family in Vienna, a family going through both wars over several generations. And the family, they're Jewish, but they also, it's a bris and a baptism. It's Christmas and Hanukkah. And it's I never kind of understood that about my family, because there was a Christian influence, and I didn't understand why. And I think it's partly to do with
hiding it,
or wanting to be a part of a high society, or part of society, not even high society, society. And another thing that the play explores is false memories and repressed memories, things hidden. So my grandma would she's passed now a few years, but she would always deny being Jewish. And despite, the birth certificate Israelite, you just, no. And it was a taboo. We couldn't talk about it. It was very traumatizing for her. And, there are even examples. There was one survivor, her aunt, Titi, who had, I think she'd been in 2 camps, Auschwitz and then another one further north, in the north. I've forgotten the name. And she had the tattoo. And my mom asked her, well, how did she have the tattoo? She was like, oh no, she was married to a Jewish man. They come up that she had come up with ways to make her make sense of the trauma of it. But how can one make sense of it when all of the cousins and uncles are wiped out? How to deal with that? It's can't necessarily.
Do you think it's the other side of the coin that you're wrestling with China? I mean, here you have a whole family, and they're fine, and their countrymen are fine, and then quickly, all of a sudden, all their countrymen turn on them, and they don't leave because they don't think it could happen. It's like, it's not going to happen to us. It's we're fine. We know our neighbors.
Yeah.
Isn't it this? It's the same, just the other side of the same coin, isn't it?
That certainly was the case for my great-grandfather. He fought in the First War with the Hungarians, and so the idea that they would then turn on him, how that must feel, is beggars belief. When you commit your life, you risk your life for a people, and then those same people turning at you. And I think that's something that Jewish people have been dealing with for millennia. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Kanye? Do you know Kanye?
I haven't met Kanye.
Okay.
I love his music. I think he is a musical genius. And apparently, that's a contentious thing to say. I think he's.
It didn't used to be. It didn't used to be, and then he started voting another way or talking about God, and all of a sudden, he's not a genius, he's crazy.
He has said some amazing things. I love that he said, fear God and you shall fear nothing else. I think that's superb. I think it's absolutely true. I have no qualms whatsoever in saying that his recent spat of comments and statements are absolutely anti-Semitic and saying he'd go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people is horrible, and I find it strange that so few people find that easy to condemn him. Having said that, obviously he's lost now $1.5 billion worth of his business being dropped by Adidas and the stuff.
So is that cancel culture, or is that just
that's freedom of
decency?
association, because that's if that is cancel culture, then that's a type I don't have.
Unless it's coordinated.
Well, look, to say anti-Semitic things like that, that's not okay. That is hateful, and that's different from defending women. That's different from J.K. Rowling, who said nothing transphobic. She's been actually quite loving to people who are transgender, and that's very different to explicit anti-Semitic.
But don't you think?
Comments?
Don't you think? I mean, I think one of the problems with the world is, I don't know what it's like in England, but here in America, on every street there is some yokel that is like, you tell your kids, yeah, don't. You see him outside, stay away. There's always somebody on the block who's like nuts, one way or another. And I like knowing who that is so I can avoid them. You know what I mean? But, now that person has found all of the other people like them on everybody else's street. And we're like, God, we've got to stop them. They've always been here. They've always been here. We just need to know who they are and then move on. My problem is, because you have a right to disassociate from me if you want. It's when the pressure starts to come, and you're not doing it because you believe in it. You're doing it because we better not. We're going to lose sales. We're going to lose this, and then it's coordinated. The attack is coordinated. What he said was bad. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not sure which it is in this case. Is it part of the attack that he's been under the whole time, or is this real? The only
is what he's saying what he really thinks? Is that what
no. First of all, are you a free speech absolutist?
Well, I don't think you should lie in court. Yes.
But other than that, I have a right to say horrible things.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can just say, well,
Yes.
I'm not going to talk to him anymore.
I don't. I'm against inciting violence. I do think that should be policed.
Agree with that. Agree with you.
Whatever the absolutist.
Free speech absolutist. You don't incite violence, but you can hold the only speech worth protecting is the stuff that all of us go, what the hell is wrong with him? You don't have to protect the speech that everybody is in agreement with, and so I just have I'd just like to hear your philosophical view on you have the right to disassociate.
Yeah, I think freedom of association is an important part of the puzzle. And when it comes to artists, I'm still going to listen to Kanye West, but there are artists, if I thought that by listening to them they were getting my money and that was helping them continue with nefarious behavior, I would draw the line there.
As a person.
As a person. I think on the freedom of speech this doesn't really apply to Kanye, but what I've found is that usually if people want you to shut up, it's because there's something about what you're saying is true. Because if it wasn't true, it wouldn't be a threat to them. So I found that a lot of people want me to shut up, and that's if it wasn't true that, let's say, on the hill I died on, which was
Andy Ngo,
and the BLM riots and the deaths going on, and then the federal buildings being burnt down, I wouldn't be a threat to them. They wouldn't need to shut me up. So actually, to take that thinking a step further forward, if you, and by the way, conservatives do this as well. Everyone does this. If you want someone to shut up, actually the best way to do it is to deal with what they're saying, the part of what they're saying, which is true, and actually confront it head on instead of ignoring it. Because if you ignore it, it just turns into a bigger issue, and then more nefarious people, people with can take it on and do more damage with it. You have to deal with the difficult stuff. So that's not exactly an answer to your question, but I'm certainly a free speech absolutist. But with free speech comes the responsibility to confront the difficult issues.
Yes, totally. All of our rights have huge responsibilities, and we don't want. It doesn't seem like we want those responsibilities anymore. We just tell me what to say, tell me where to work, tell me what to eat, tell me how my temperature should be in my house, and I'm fine.
I'm guilty of that sometimes.
I think we all are. You dated Katy Perry for a while.
No.
No, you didn't?
No.
Really? Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure I have it in my research. But I just wanted to know because, I mean, if you were dating, was it the English accent?
I met her. She's a wonderful woman. And
Sorry, it was presented in what I read as you hooked up.
Glenn, let's not get into details.
Okay, all right. Okay.
But she's a very smart woman.
So is it the English accent or is it the banjo that, she thought, I got to hook up with? Because
Glenn, you should invite her onto the show. I couldn't possibly speak for her.
No, they will.
I'd be surprised if she remembers me. So.
Well, I was going to say, because you were voted the 6th worst dressed man.
Oh, you got some great facts, Glenn.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, I was 6th worst dressed man by GQ in one year. I'm not quite sure, can't remember quite what year, but that was a very proud moment for me. Hopefully things have changed a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I put on a suit.
A little bit. So the podcast, what do you have coming up? Who do you want? Who's like...
I tell you what, I'd love to get, Shane Gillis, right? He's an American comedian, and I've loved this guy. He's doing a new stand-up, and which is on YouTube, and he's just making me. He also does a sketch show on YouTube, and he's got this one. He's got some very funny one about Trump doing speed dating. He does a great Trump impersonation, and he also does a great one about a car salesman whose surname is ISIS. And he was actually cast in SNL, and then the SNL sacked him before he even really got started because they dug up in his podcast some things they deemed had, offended the progressive mind. And but I think he's one of the great comedians in America at the moment. So I'd love to get this guy. And there's another woman, which again I think you should get her, is Mazia Linejad, who is an Iranian dissident. Because what's going on in Iran? If we talk, people care about free speech, people care about women's rights. Let's look at Iran. It's
another place where nobody is paying attention. And I mean, I saw the Iranian people out with rocks coming after the people with machine guns. I know who's going to win there, at least in the short term. Those people are brave, really brave, and kids are being really brave and not getting the attention they deserve.
Absolutely, and women. It's to be a woman there, and with the decades of suppression, to stand up, to take off their burqas and to stand up to these tyrannical clerics. Yeah. And there's these countless videos. It's so moving, but it's become bloody, and it's very sad. And one can only hope that freedom comes to Iran.
I have something for you to do. This is a rare opportunity. Had these for a while. I thought this would be a good time to break them out.
This is very exciting.
Okay. These are from 1760.
Wow.
And they are toasting glasses for the coronation of King George III.
Your last king.
And I thought, since you have, I don't have any champagne or anything.
Oh, my goodness.
I thought they haven't been used in I don't know how long, but...
Thank you.
I thought we could toast your new king. You got to love him, right?
I'm a monarchist.
How about a toast to the last king of England?
We'll just toast to the last queen.
The last queen. She was great.
Although, Glenn, we shouldn't toast when it's non-alcoholic, but we can certainly raise our glasses.
See, you were brought up in one of those fancy schools where you were just like, it's beer.
But that's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a treat.
So
to the queen. The queen. Wow.
These were sent over from the king to somebody here in America in the founding era, somebody who was a very loyal British subject, and so they could toast his coronation.
Wow. And where did you find them?
Some friends found them for me.
Yeah, you've got a great collection.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's eclectic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna dig into your museum after this, because I want to get a photograph of that Ben-Hur costume.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of stuff that shows how crappy the kings were over in England. And
we want to go there, do we? I know you guys like to think it was your independence,
right?
But actually, it was us who were liberated from the burden of the colonies across the sea. So yeah, we celebrate.
Well,
still.
one of these days, and perhaps with King Charles on the throne soon, you'll recognize king thing. Not a good idea. Although
you're so wrong, Glenn. The problem you got here in America is you don't have a king, because everything's at the feet of your president. Now, the king stands above it all, represents the people.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Yes, he does. And he's a link to God. And so whoever you elect, you're laughing at me, Glenn.
Oh,
whoever you elect,
I wish this was booze.
has to explain himself to the monarch. But here, you just have Biden. Who's he explaining himself to? Running riot.
Probably
Perhaps.
George Soros at this point.
Well,
World Economic Forum.
If he had to explain himself to someone, if he had to put himself below someone, perhaps we might be in a better place.
See, we used to think, and we don't anymore, we used to think no king but God.
Yeah.
Well. And that's the problem. You don't really have the God thing over in England. And
what do you mean we don't have the God thing?
You're pretty lost on God over there, aren't you? I mean, I know you grew up.
Well, King Charles is the head of the
yes, I know.
The church.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
No, you're right that we've lost.
You're not as bad as Europe. I mean, Europe is a bunch of godless animals over there.
Well, Glenn, I think we could talk about the Europeans, but instead, why don't we pray for them?
Yes,
we'll pray for the Europeans that they find God.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
God bless.